Today we're going to talk about cool season gardens. And what's nice about the area that we live in Sacramento is that we are able to grow vegetables and fruits pretty much all year. So I think the main thing is that people are so focused on the summer crops that we miss the opportunities that are available during the winter.
So there are a lot of different ways people grow vegetables. There are boxes and raised beds. They're in ground. I've seen people growing in baskets that they're hanging, which I guess would be a container also. What you're going to be getting as it comes around is a sheet that is actually in our Sacramento County Master Gardener calendar for this year, and this year's calendar focuses on fruit and a lot of other things that you grow in your garden and timing of what to do each month. And this is particularly a great tool that's in the back and inside cover of the calendar that shows different times that you either plant or start seeds, or you would direct seed outdoors or start seeds inside. And we're going to walk you through a couple of lines of this chart now and tell you kind of how to read this chart.
The broccoli?
Oh yes, broccoli.
All right, so this is the interactive part. Does anybody see broccoli on there? You see it on there? What does it say when you read across on the dates? February? Yep. January, yeah. July, August, September, October, November. See all those different codes on there? Look down at the bottom if you guys will. See where it says direct seed outdoor? The main focus of this, guys, is to let you know that there's information available. It's available online. It's free for you. Just need to know how to use the information in the chart. So what we want to do really with this exercise is just get a feel and understanding on how to use it. So right now we're in the month of September. So if we look at broccoli on there, does everybody see that? What does it say in that little yellow box there? Plant seedlings. So that means if we have a plant already started, now's the time to do that. What could you do in October?
Wait. There's more.
Yeah, go ahead.
But there's more. You'll notice there's a color inside the box for September, and it's yellow, as you noted. And if you go down to the bottom, in the legend at the bottom, it says the yellow actually means you can direct seed outdoors. And then the other color it's a little bit more orange, and that color means you would start seeds inside, indoors. So in other words, you've got two options here in September. You can plant plants outside, or you can start seeds. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting thing right now is that we have opportunity to have food grown at our own home space. And I don't know if any of you guys have been to the grocery store lately, but stuff's starting to move up. For the price of literally a couple bucks, we could get you something. As you can see in this, the reason why we chose this is number one, California, the most chosen vegetable on how to plant is broccoli. This particular variety you can actually harvest throughout the year for months.
I bought a couple of 6-packs yesterday at the nursery, and I paid $5.50 for one 6-pack. That's almost $1 per plant. This package of seeds that I also bought at the same time, $2.50. So even if you only get one 6-pack's worth of seeds out of this package that has probably 150 seeds in it, you're really saving some money. We wanted to talk about garlic, which is, if you'll move down into the G's, down your row here, you'll see, and if you read across there, really, it doesn't indicate that in our area you'd want to plant garlic anytime in the summer when it's really, really hot. But as we move into fall, it's an excellent time to plant not just garlic, but other onion type of plants too. So I brought some garlic today to show you. I've been growing.
Can I hand a couple out?
Yeah, I've been growing this particular type of garlic, which I've lost the name of now, in my yard. And we will be passing some out so that you can actually have some. But it grows to a head this size. This is a, actually this one looks like it might have, no, this is a soft neck garlic. I grow both soft neck and hard neck. The hard neck garlics would have a stem coming out of the center, and then it wants to go to seed. So it's important to cut that scape. They call it a scape. Cut that off. You can actually eat it. Any part of a garlic is edible. They tend to have larger cloves around them. The ones that are that have the stem, the stalk in them. These soft neck, they tend to have smaller cloves. Although this particular variety has very large cloves. But the deal with the soft neck is that they store longer. So you'll harvest it, you'll grow it over the winter, and you'll harvest in the spring, late spring, early summer even. And then if it's really hot, these will last longer. They just store longer. You want to have them kind of in a coolish place, although I have to say these were not stored in a cool spot. They were just in the shade. And I have an outside barn that's open. And so they're really very forgiving. They're not hard to grow at all, and we want to encourage you to do that.
See the two spots on it? Which one's the bottom, which one's the top?
Okay, maybe it's easier to look like this. This is the way it sits in the ground. The pointy part is up, and it grows the leaves. The leaves come out of the pointier part at the top, and when you break them off,
that's what you get there.
You get,
Everybody see that?
They come off like this. And the bottom is flat, and it looks like it might have little roots that'll start, which is exactly what's going to happen there. The roots will come out. I like to plant them not too deeply. I've read up to 2 inches. I never plant them that deep in my yard. I'll just plant them so they're barely covered, because if they're really too deep, they tend to be a little harder for me to harvest in my garden. Sometimes I'll go down and I'll actually put my shovel through some of it. If I can kind of just pull the dirt away and see where it is, it's much easier to harvest. You know, I have grown garlic from the store. If it's organic would be better, because then you'd know for sure it hadn't been irradiated to kind of keep it longer from sprouting. But I haven't had a problem with garlic from the store. I like the garlic that you buy at the nursery better. It seems to just be a stronger variety. You don't know how long they've been stored in or what the conditions were when you get it in the grocery store, those little packages. And so I would say, you could try it, but if you want to really be sure you're going to have a good garlic, there are so many varieties of garlic. Spicy, hot, mild. So, yeah.
Does everybody know the difference between the garlic that we just looked at and broccoli seeds? Small, the difference. What's the difference in planting depth?
Oh yeah.
Planting depth.
Read on the back of your package. Yes. So this is a particular type of broccoli that I grow here, and it's recommended for our area. It's called Dicicco. D-I-C-I-C-C-O, and I have brought extras, and so I brought some little envelopes if you want to come up later and put some of these seeds in the little packet. You're welcome to take some home. And but the deal, like we were saying, with these seeds, the seeds are so small. Generally, you don't want to plant any seed more. You want to put like twice the size of the seed, the dirt, over the top of it. So if the seed is like, an 1/8 of an inch, then you don't want to cover it by any more than a 1/4 of an inch or an 1/8 of an, 1/8 to a 1/4 of an inch. Because what happens with seeds, all seeds, is that they start to grow and they have enough energy in them to get them up out of the ground. And as soon as they're out of the ground, they get their first little new leaves, which are called cotyledons. And those have chlorophyll in them, and they start producing food for the plant. So the plant produces its own food. But until it gets out of the ground, it's going off of what's inside the seed. So if you plant this seed too deeply, it'll be growing, and it'll go, oh, I just can't do it. And then it just won't happen. You want to keep them damp, because if at any point in time your seeds dry out while they're starting to germinate, they'll die. I water mine if it's warm. I water them 2-3 times a day, just sprinkle, just to make sure the soil stays moist. If it's a really overcast, cool time and nothing dries out, then it's, I would do.
I always tease everybody. The correct answer is it depends.
It depends.
Is it 110 when we're starting our seeds, or is it 80 degrees and overcast? So it's going to depend on all those things, but those are the correct methods to handle with that.
Another thing is that all seeds have a range of temperature, the ground temperature that they will germinate at. And if you're like above it or below it, you're not going to have anything happen. These come up, I don't know, somewhere between 60 and 80 degrees soil temperature, but if the soil where the sun was beating on it was more than that, you wouldn't have had success with your seeds.
Did everybody hear that on this side? Soil temperature. What's the difference between soil temperature and air temperature? Usually there's going to be a huge difference in the temperature depending on what the exposure is. Guess what? If you're using raised boxes like so many of you are here, how much hotter do you think this ground level is versus what's down below our feet? So that's an important thing to remember. It's not the air temperature that we're worried about, it's that ground temperature where that stuff's starting.
Why is it hotter in a raised bed, Jesse?
Great question, Ruth.
Thank you.
The reason why it's hotter is because it's because it's raised up and more exposed to the sun. Usually the soil is actually not soil as well. It's usually a mixture of more organic material which heats up in its own right.
There are different kinds of broccoli. There are some that are just mostly sprouting broccoli, calabrese type. There's head broccoli, which is probably what we're mostly used to seeing in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And there are broccolis that you can grow that give you just one nice big head. But what I like, the types I like to grow are, you get a medium-sized head, and then you cut that, and then you get pretty good sized side shoots. So you can cut them off over the season, and you can extend your harvest for a couple months. Yeah. And each time you cut, the next florets that come out are smaller each time. So ultimately, eventually, you're going to go, is this really worth it? And then the plant will be done.
There is a little bit of a nuance that's described in that handout that I gave you, and the difference is it's a cool season crop. Some are a little bit more hardy to more extremes.
Right.
So most of the broccoli that's grown in California is in Monterey County, which has a perfect average temperature of 60, 65 degrees. Central Valley, we're going to move into a different variety because we have more extremes in those temperatures.
And I think on the back of the package, when you buy your broccoli, you'll notice things like this says small to medium-sized heads well into the summer for more delicious broccoli more often. So if you have, this is more of a heat-tolerant broccoli, then it's not a heat. It wouldn't grow in the season the week we just had, but it will grow when it's warmer. Yeah. And also I have another kind. This is called Waltham 29. This has been an heirloom that's been around forever. And it also grows prolific side shoots, which is why I like to grow it.
In a seed bed when we're starting, burlap is a good material to use over the top of it to hold the moisture in and to be able to water through.
And if you don't have burlap, you can use a lot of different things. You can use a piece of sheet or a floating row cover. There are a variety of these kinds of things come in different weights. That works too. I use burlap. I like the burlap because it has the weaving has holes. The weaving is large, and also this works. This is just your basic shade cloth you might see on an arbor. And then when you see your little seedlings come up, if it's still hot, you can take some kind of little framing thing that you could put anything, just sticks or something, just to raise the burlap over because you don't want.
How do you use this, Ruth?
Well, actually, I use this. I use this to help shade my little plants like this last week. I use tomato cages, small tomato cages. I actually don't ever use for tomatoes. I use for my peppers. This is a perfect example. If you could look over here, this person put up a little shade cloth with a little wooden structure to shade the basil, and actually gives a little shade to the tomato also. And that's an excellent idea, and that's probably why that basil looks halfway decent right now. But yeah, I use this. I just have extra stuff at home. I just make things out of, and then I'll put like I said, I'll put things over the top of it, you know, to help protect it from sun. I'll either put a structure that makes it go straight across and put the plant down below, and or I'll throw it directly over the top of something that holds it up.
So the question is about soil, the different types. The question is, again, the answer is easy. It depends. What's the situation that you're dealing with specifically? Are we in a raised bed? Are we in a container? Are we directly in the ground? You're in a raised bed? Yeah. So typically in this situation, what we have available for us in this area is going to be a blend. So if you ever go to the landscape yards, there's blends of soil. Why would they have all these different blends? Well, there's different applications for it. Typically in our business, we use a 50-50 blend. And the reason why we do that, it's 50% screen top soil and 50% compost. The reason why we do that is because of the structure. So we have a little bit of structure in there, and there's a great example in this bed if you want to look at it later. This was installed a couple of years ago, and we've already seen the settling happening. So if you use too much compost, that compost breaks down over time, and it will actually lower, and you'll have to replenish your beds more often. Same thing with a 50-50 blendo as well. How deep is your bed? 18? I would make it about 18. Fill that thing all the way up. Yeah. Well, how deep is a tomato plant's roots go down?
Well, I've planted them in pots before, which was a mistake. I had a large pot, and the thing ultimately did great for the longest time, and then it just, I couldn't give it enough water, and when I took the plant out, the roots were just, it was totally root bound, and there was no getting out. So actually, if you pull your tomato plant out at the end of the season, you're going to see that the roots really go pretty far out, and probably even into your next
the more
plant.
the better. If you can get a deeper bed, we want to have that.
So the comment is, she used to grow broccoli, but when she brought it into the house to rinse it, it was full of little green worms. So that there's the imported white cabbage butterfly. You may see those in your yard. They're about so big, and they're real cute, and they like to land on brassica plants. Like brassicas would be this family of like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, collards, and they lay their eggs, and when their eggs hatch out, they hatch out and they're a worm. They're a little green worm. There are some organic applications you can put on your plants. You'll see if you turn the leaves over, they like to lay underneath the leaves, and you turn your leaves over, you'll see either worms or you'll see egg casings underneath there. And you can use a product called Bacillus thuringiensis, which is an organic project. It's only targets worms. It doesn't hurt wildlife, birds, your pets, all of that. But boy, it does a job on the worms. So
and that product is BT at the nursery. So just so you know that fancy name, I can't repeat. No. That's what it is.
Yeah, BT. And it's a bacteria. So no, well, they can be. I usually use the powder, but the liquid works fine. Egyptian walking onions are a really interesting.
We'll have more up front.
A different kind of an onion than you've probably ever grown. They start out, we're passing around little bulblets, and they're like onions that look like little pearl onions like you buy at the grocery store in the frozen food section. They're very small. And you plant them, like you would plant your garlic, not too deep. In fact, they're called walking onions because they can actually plant themselves by just falling on the topsoil if it's a good soil. So I have two of them here, and they're kind of intertwined. But I wanted to show you what they look like this time of year. This is not their best look.
They look like too.
But they have an all through the year thing that happens. So you plant. What you plant is the bulblet, which is what you have in your hand.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And if you have more than one, if you end up with like a group of them, break them apart. I plant them a couple of inches apart, maybe 4 inches apart, and
that's cool.
And what they do is they grow, and this is what when they start growing, they look like a little green onion, and you can eat this little green onion. It's just fabulous, just like what you'd get a bunch of green onions at the store. If you let it go, it'll grow and send up a hollow stalk, and at the top of it, it'll grow some bulblets. And usually you'll have another little stalk come out and a few little bulblets here that will be a little smaller, and sometimes you'll even have coming out of that more small bulblets. And they're really pretty cool. When they're done at this time of year, if they haven't started growing like this one did, underneath the ground you end up with these larger bulbs, and they are a lot like shallots, and they can be used like shallots, and they're absolutely wonderful. I highly recommend trying. It takes, you won't get anything until next year, but you'll get green onions, and if you plant several of these, you can harvest the green onions. If you leave them in the ground, and they fall, they'll plant themselves like this, because they get heavy and then they fall over, and then they would plant themselves, and then they would grow up in a clump. So I encourage you to try Egyptian walking onions. Yes?
Will these require full sun?
They can have full sun. You could have usually we say vegetables at least 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours of sun. Yeah, otherwise, I have some that volunteered under a persimmon tree that I have, and they've done fine. And they get a lot of shade because they're under the tree.
Each of these handouts that I'm giving you guys has information on it
Take some of them.
that I would love for you guys to be able to use. I'll let you pass that around.
This handout is similar to the one that we passed out that was colored. So take one and pass it down. It's arranged differently, and go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So with this guy, it'll look very similar to the color one that I gave you. But what's nice about it is that this information is available for all of you to go obtain. So the information that's on here will allow you to be able to go onto this website, and it has a plethora, how about that $5 word, of information for all kinds of gardening needs, especially gardens during the summer, pests, diseases, that kind of fun stuff. So each one of the handouts has a different setup on it. So if you look at the one that has the information on the broccoli, that's a great daily. I think she does Sacramento Digs Gardening.
At least once a week they try.
Yeah, at least.
These can be found on the Sacramento County Master Gardener website. There's in the menu bar at the top, there's a place that says publications and videos. And if you click on that, it'll give you way more handouts than you could possibly ever want. One I also like for home gardeners, and a lot of times when we're doing any cool season or warm season vegetables, is we like to integrate herbs into our landscape. And there's an excellent handout there called Culinary Herb Profiles, and it takes almost every herb you could think of, and it breaks it up into how it grows, like if it's a shrub or grass, or what kind of soil it takes, what kind of water it takes, when to harvest it, and it's just in each section for each herb is just a very small paragraph. How cold is too cold? In our area, for let's say you're growing broccoli and it gets down to 32, no problem. One of the things that happens when it's cold is that the leaves on all your plants they'll freeze. They look like they're frozen, and oh my gosh, and they're all kind of covered with a white frost. Just leave them, don't touch them because you'll damage them. Leave them until they thaw out and they'll look just perfect. And yeah, so if you're gonna harvest for your broccoli for breakfast the next morning, you probably wanna do it in the evening, because if you go out in the morning and you try to cut it, it could be frozen if it's real cool. They can actually go lower than that, than 32. But if they go much lower, I would cover them with, one of the things that disappeared here. Yeah, frost cloth. This is actually a frost cloth because it's a heavier version. Like I think I told you that it comes in a lightweight version. They're called floating row covers when they're lightweight. You can just throw them right over your plants, and the plants will grow underneath them. They're kind of nice in the early season, in the spring when the bugs are starting to come out, because the bugs don't, it keeps them off of them, and it helps with things like your worm problem. A lot of times it'll come on a roll at the nursery, and they'll just pull off however much you want, cut it for you. Also comes in bags, folded. You can buy it online. If you just Google floating row covers, it'll come up with the different types of brands.
Yeah.
And flowers, cool weather, cool season flowers.
Yeah.
Don't forget those. This is a great time, not just for onion bulbs and garlic bulbs, but other bulbs too. And calendulas, wonderful over winter. They come up in the spring. Like a pineapple guava, those are excellent here in this area. Excellent. They're very, very water efficient, and the fruit is good, and the flowers are so excellent in salads. They're beautiful. If you haven't seen a pineapple guava flower, so the outside of the flower petals are called sepals, and the sepals are white, and they're kind of curvy, and they're very succulent-y, and then the inside have this spray of anthers, different parts, flower parts, just crazy. It looks like a little firecracker inside. And when you pick them off, they taste sweet, and you put them in salads or fruit salads, and they're just, I'm excited about it again. I get carried away.
So the question is about drip irrigation. Is it better to keep it buried or up higher so you can see it? So what's the answer? It depends. So when we say drip irrigation, I equate it to saying a four-door car. You know, what does that mean? So drip irrigation is a lot of different things. The number one rule as an irrigation nerd, don't mix the type of emitters that you have. So if you have the one that does the little dial thing and bubbles out on the top, they're all that all the way through. In these beds here, we've installed what's called an inline drip system. So the emitter's built into the tubing and then spaced at a certain row. There's also the point source emitters, which are gonna be a pressure compensating, hopefully, and will apply the water directly to the base of the plant as you get it started. So as far as below the soil, some of them are designed to be buried below the soil, and some of them are designed to be up on top. Typically, if you're doing like a spaghetti type system is what everybody calls it, we want to keep that up so that we can see it and then cover it with a layer of mulch. How do you determine what type of system to use irrigation-wise? Whatever you're comfortable with. Again,
Exactly.
You know, we use a certain type of system in our installs because I can get accurate numbers from it. And when I say accurate numbers, what we're using irrigation to do is to supplement the lack of rain that we don't have and to keep the moisture content at a certain level. Not all irrigation systems are created the same. So if they don't allow for, how long do you run it for, is the question I hear all the time. How long do you run your irrigation system for? It depends. How fast is the water coming out of it? So with certain systems, we can do that math very easily. Other systems, it's a little bit more trial and error. So a little bit of homework on it to whatever you feel comfortable with using too, you know. Question is should he replace a Stoker hose with drip irrigation? Remember, these products are developed for certain purposes. A lot of times we're using stuff because that's what we have. This is what Ruth had, so this works perfect over a plant. She had it available. A soaker hose is a great example. Water was readily available here and quite frankly was inexpensive. So laying something down and just running it until it looked like everything was wet, hey, good to go. Now we just have technology with the products themselves that will allow us to put the water in a precise way and you know what's going out of it. That's really what the difference is. This system, we know that there's an emitter in the tube and then a row spacing. And between those two numbers, I run it for a certain amount of time. I know what the precipitation rate is from it. Now we have controllers that will actually adjust it up and down. If I know what the precipitation rate is that I'm trying to put down, it'll adjust it up and down for you. It just eliminates one thing to worry about in the garden.
She's growing in a greenhouse situation, and it's different growing there, but some of these answers will apply to above ground. If you're getting a whole lot of foliage and no flowers, chances are your soil is very enriched with nitrogen, which is like going to feed leaves and less for flowers. The other thing is in a greenhouse, unlike being outside, you don't have the influence of let me back up. Flowers on a tomato plant they're perfect. They have male and female in the same flower. And they're actually kind of closed over. So the pollen, you don't need bees to pollinate tomato plants. But what you do need is some sort of shaking going on so the pollen will hit. So a lot of times people will go in, they'll shake their plants, or they'll electric toothbrush something or whatever.
The question is, if you're doing the inline emitter system, they come in different flow rates and different spacings. How do you determine which one to use? It depends on your soil type. So your soil type, does everybody know what that means? Does that make sense when I say that? Clay, sand, loam. It moves water different. So the way this system works is it actually uses capillary action. Does everybody know what capillary action is? Have you ever seen an oil burning lamp and the oil come up the wick? How does it move liquid against gravity? It does it by capillary action. That's how this system works. So knowing your soil type, what the consistency is, determines what the flow rates are. That's why it's so difficult when you're using the system like what you were describing with the soaker hose. We have all these different soil types. How do we move that water around for each soil type and go, here's the cookie cutter for you, here's the cookie cutter for you? It's very difficult. So we need to understand what the soil texture and type is, and then that's what determines that.
Vegetables are super heavy feeders. They're
So, yeah, compost is
generally
good.
annual, so they live 1 year and they just suck all the nutrients out of your garden bed. So it's helpful to put some kind of compost or some sort of organic material at least in the hole where you're going to be planting, and a little bit of very low low nitrogen fertilizer, and also because you want to, when your plants start, you want that, when you buy fertilizer in the bag, you have 3 numbers or 3 letters on it, N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And the phosphorus and potassium are responsible for root growth and stem growth, fruit growth, flowers, and the nitrogen is especially for leaves. So you want to just keep that kind of low, but you can put a little fertilizer in. Maybe a time release would be good. I just use a basic 4-3-2 whatever low number.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up real quick, but we're happy to stay here as long as you guys want and answer all your questions. So thank you guys very much. This was excellent group. Thank you for all the awesome questions.